Welcome to CPXL. This podcast of CrossPoint Church is designed to encourage you to go further and grow deeper. CrossPoint is a rural multi-site church committed to taking the gospel to every place and everyone. You can access all CrossPoint resources at crosspointchurch.com. But now, let's join this episode of CPXL with your host, Pastor Andy Addis.
And the wonderful Mrs. Addis. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. How are you today?
Knowing that as soon as everyone hears your voice, they're going to know you're not super okay.
I'm not super okay.
You are. I asked a few minutes ago, are you trying to get sick? And you said you're trying not to. So there's a lot of, there is no try, only do.
Only do.
Only do.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you laying it on the line for CPXL, being willing to leave nothing on the field, give everything you got. Thank you, dear. Appreciate you being here. As we are progressing through this, we're continuing a series. We started doing the book of Proverbs. And if you haven't been with us, what we're doing is we're asking you to read a chapter of Proverbs every week, and then we're going to highlight a portion of that. And what Kathy's asked me to do in the past is, like when we do questions or specific things, she doesn't want to know. She wants to respond like it's fresh.
Right.
And so she's unaware of things. Sometimes I wonder if it's because she doesn't want homework. If that's what I do.
No.
I don't know if that's what that is.
No.
It couldn't be that. So she just wants to be fresh. And today is one of those days. Actually, right when she sat down, she goes, okay, we're chapter 4. What verse? I said, I'm even going to withhold that from you because...
That's part of it, is what you said.
It is part of it. Because chapter 4, Proverbs chapter 4, there's a passage, verses 23 through 27, which I have preached and preached and preached. It was one of the first sermons that I ever preached that stuck. I've done it at camps, revivals, done it everywhere I've ever been, usually multiple times. I love this passage. But I did it out of the New International Version. So the language is a little different. But the reason I withheld it from you is I bet if I start it, you can finish this phrase. So you ready?
I can try.
You ready?
Oh.
Above all else.
Guard your heart.
There you
it
go.
is the wellspring of life.
Well, that's all you got to remember. We do that everywhere we go. Above all else.
Guard your heart.
That was it.
Yeah.
You remember? So we've been doing this one for years.
True.
It's one of my favorite passages, and I don't know why, as a youth pastor, it was great to talk to students about this because it doesn't just tell you to guard your heart, then it gives you some practical steps as to how do we actually do this.
Right.
So where I'm used to it saying, above all else, guard your heart, the English Standard, which I teach out of now, is keep your heart with all vigilance. So it's a little different, but it's the same thing. So why don't we go ahead and read. I want to do a double reading. This is so good. I love this passage. You read all of chapter 4. If you didn't read all of chapter 4, go back and do that again. If you're just starting this, go back to the first 3 or 4 weeks ago when we started all this and just join us on this journey. That's the beauty of podcasts. There's no grades. No grades. And you just show up when you show up. But why don't you read it out of the NLT, verses 23 through 27, which is the end of the chapter. And then I'll do the same thing out of the ESV before we do a little bit of Bible study.
Okay. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet. Stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil.
All right, same passage, Proverbs 4, 23 through 27, but out of the English Standard Version says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or the left. Turn your foot from evil. I just love this because it's real practical. It's one of those tension verses because, we pray the Lord's Prayer, which is deliver us from evil. But then God also says, here's one of the ways I'm going to deliver you. Be smart.
Right. Do what I tell you to do.
Yeah, let me help you out with this. The kid who continues to stick the fork in the light socket is going to get shocked. That's the way that works. Dad may at one point turn the breaker off for you, but at some point you're going to wander into another house. You got to learn not to do that.
That's true.
We all good? All right, so let's wander through this. Verse 23 is the setup verse, and then 24 through 27 actually are the practice. So let's talk about this. What is the setup? Above all else, guard your heart, or keep your heart with all vigilance. The word heart here is not like we use heart. We talk about this all the time. Whenever you do Hebrew, For Hebrews, the heart was the seat of the emotions. It was the center of who you were. As a matter of fact, I did a little study today that said this: heart means more than mental or emotional capacity. It encompasses one's values. Matter of fact, it goes on to define it, the couplets of Hebrew poetry. So it says, keep your heart with all vigilance, and then it tells you why, for from it flow the springs of life. Your heart is the source. Everything that comes out of you is from the heart in the Hebrew mindset. And so you got to go to Jesus when Jesus says, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but... Oh, I thought you would know that one right off. I'm sorry. You would. You just on Dayquil. It's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but it's what comes out of him. Yeah, there it is. It's what comes out of him that defiles him. And so what this is saying is keep your heart. And it's not just keep, but that with all vigilance. That goes back to why I used to make students repeat that again and again. It literally means, and this is why I wish the ESV would have translated it this way, literally means above all guarding. So above all else, guard your heart is what it said in the NIV. And the actual word means above all guarding. So the most important thing in this passage, it's saying more important than anything else, you guard your heart because out of it, everything else is going to flow. That is the headwaters for your life. And you and I have done a fair amount of hiking in our days. I mean, we're not like 14ers all the time and this and that, but we love a good day hike. And we actually, with the boys, when they were preteen and early teen, did Mount Harney, which is the highest peak on our side of the Continental Divide. It was we didn't tell them that until we did it.
Right. Just to make sure we could get to the top.
That's right. And so, I mean, we do a fair amount of hiking, but I remember once, I can't remember the last time we told the story. If I told it recently, forgive. But you and I were hiking up Chimney Rock.
Chimney Rock.
And we were being shamed by old ladies carrying their purses in cotton pants and house shoes that were just blowing past us. So we were determined to make this trip. And but at one point there was a little pool, an eddy coming down off of this mountain, and you could see the thing, the gimmick about this hike is that it was the fountain or the waterfall from
Last of the Mohicans.
Yeah, that movie, Last of the Mohicans,
right,
where they're behind it and they're hiding, and they told us there's no behind it. That was all for the movie.
Spoiler alert.
But that was it. And Chimney Rock was the hike up to this, and so
this was in North Carolina, right?
Yes, right outside Asheville. And so we were walking up, we're going up, and there was a group of hikers ahead of us who stopped and they're filling up their canteens, this little eddy, and you know, I'm a germaphobe and I'm a water purist. I'm like, nope, I don't care how clean that looks.
He says water purist. He's a water snob.
I am a water snob. I like only purified water or die of dehydration. That's where I come from. And by the way, naturally purified just means groundwater. Don't you want mechanical processes and chemical engineering? That's what you want. Anyway. So they're filling all that up, and Kathy's like, "Oh, that looks so good." I'm like, "Nope, I will protect you. I'm not going to let you do that." And
like, do it.
We had never been so glad as when we went around. It was the very next curve, because as you came up, it was like a zigzag up. The next zigzag up, there was a pool that was feeding that pool. And there was a baby in his diaper that some hikers were letting play. Oh, isn't this cute? He's playing. And that was just filled. And they were filling up their can.
And the guy that had taken his shoes off and was putting his feet in the water and splashing around. And all those people. Andy and I both just went. And we looked at each other, and Andy's like, "Don't say a word.
Don't say a word.
Don't say a word."
But I looked at her like, "Aren't you glad I didn't let you do that?"
That's so nasty.
Now, that's the headwaters. What's upstream in your life? You know, it's flowing down. And if it gets junkified up there, it's going to be junkified downstream.
Yeah.
And so the scripture is clear. It is to guard your heart above all else, because everything in your life flows out of this. Your relationship with your kids flows out of what's going on in your heart.
Yeah.
Your testimony at work flows out of what's going on in your heart. Your personal, emotional, and spiritual health flows out of what's going out of your heart. Yeah. So be vigilant. Be above everything else. Guard it more than anything else, because everything. Everybody say everything.
Everything.
Sorry. everything is going to flow out. You didn't know what to say about that, did you? Anyway.
I avoid that at church, by the way.
I know you do. I know you're disobedient, but you are the most lovely, so I'll let you get away with it. So keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Now, the rest of this actually gives us, I love this, ways to protect and keep and guard your heart. Yes.
I want to go back for just one tiny little second.
You do it.
The NLT, I've always memorized it as above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life.
That's the NIV.
And that totally makes sense the way we've explained it. But NLT says, for it determines the course of your life. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's a more practical, I mean, they're both practical, but like in terms that maybe you could understand. Yeah.
See, the language of the actual text is that it's the springs of life. So they're thinking in terms of water flow, a very Bedouin people who are searching for water. What the NLT is doing is it's trying to take the same meaning of that, but put it in a context of people who aren't constantly looking for water.
Oh, that makes sense.
Is that right? So they're translating the passage, but they're making it readable, and the readability is it determines the course of your life. To be honest with you, I'd argue with it a little bit on that, because it doesn't determine the course of your life, but in the course of your life, it determines the quality of your life.
Okay, I
just
get that.
It nuanced stuff. The Holy Spirit's always going to get us through this. It's not that big a deal.
Right.
Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. And then verse 24, put away from you crooked speech and put devious talk far from you. So help me summarize that. If you said, what is the first step to guarding your heart? You got to
watch your mouth.
Watch your mouth. Watch what you say. In other words, Jesus was continuing to be echoing into the future and into the past when he says it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but it's what comes out. And right here it says that we are to guard our heart by watching what we say. Your talk can do that. Literally, the word, put away from you crooked speech is the word perverse, but it was the word meant crooked, like bent speech. That's how they just defined it. And then it's a couplet, so it says the same thing twice. Put devious talk far from you, and devious is a word that means lying or misleading. Huh. So nothing crooked, slightly bent, little off color, little just anything that's not straight. Get rid of it. And second, and put devious talk far from you, meaning lying or misleading talk. Now, you can lie and you say something wrong, but you can also mislead by saying the right thing, just not saying all of it. Omitting, right? So it's basically by those two parts of the couplet, the positive and the positive there, or the negative and the negative. Put away both of those. It's trying to cover everything. Say, if it's not straight up truth and good, don't say it. Don't say it.
Mine says, avoid all perverse talk, stay away from corrupt speech.
Mm-hmm. And what I love about it, and this is the hard part. Mine says, put away from you crooked speech and put devious talk far from you. The put that we're talking about there, it literally means put away. Like, well, there's lots of stuff in this room that we're in, right? But there's some stuff I can't get to because it's not an arm's length. I can get to everything on the table. If I got up, I could go get the books off the bookshelf. If I got up and open a cabinet door, though, I could open a cabinet. But there's also a safe in there. Yes, I have a safe in there, which has nothing valuable in it at all. I don't even know I have it. If I open it up to get in the safe, that would take another layer, and it's literally saying, put it away so you can't reach it.
Oh.
So take this talk and just put it as far away from you as you possibly can. Now, that's going to take some practice in some people's lives, right? Because sometimes we're good, but we do this because it's on the tip of our tongue. And that's exactly where we don't want it to be, because we need to put it away. And so to do that takes practice.
Yeah.
To put corrupt, lying, misleading, negative talk away. It's gonna take not being around those who pull it out of you. If you keep it within arm's length, it's gonna be there to use. But he says, put it away.
Yeah. I this is a little embarrassing to admit. But my BC days, I had a very, we're gonna say, colorful vocabulary. I'm not proud of that, but that was one of the habits that was really hard for me to break once I became a Christian. But it helped when I would hang around other Christians that I know they would look at me like Did she really just say that?
Right.
And I prayed about it a lot.
Yeah.
And I still mess it up.
Because it was habitual.
Yeah.
And so the habit had to be broken. But what you're saying is for you to put it away from you, the groups that you were around and the expectation, that helped you put it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always loved when I was in college and grad school, would go play basketball, just pick up games. And it was funny because the language on a court is just blah. It's just bad. But then about halfway through, somebody'd say, pass me the ball, pastor. And then half the guys go, huh? And you would see they might not even acknowledge it, but everything changed. Everything changed. It was so polite, and the language, and it was actually in that moment that I had a few minutes where they didn't guard me as hard. It was a bit of defense, but yes, that environment is the way you put that away. Second, verse 25, let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. So if the first one is watch what you say, the second one is
watch what you watch.
Watch what you see. Yeah, what comes in those eyes. So we're talking about the mouth and then the eyes. And when it says let, that's a passive, right? Let your eyes look directly forward. And that is that's a kind of a statement like use righteousness as spiritual blinders. Right? Because if you know where you should be going, if you have your eyes set on the prize, on the right thing, let your eyes be straightforward. And it's not just metaphorical, because the second part of the couplet, and your gaze be straight before you, it sounds like it's saying the same thing twice, and it is, except the word gaze. The reason that I bring this up is it's just hard to translate. They had to pick a word. Gaze actually is the word for eyelids. So what it means is when it says that you are to let your eyes look directly before you and your eyelids straight before you. It's very physical. So it's literally saying, don't tempt yourself with what you're looking at. It's physically. It's both eyes and eyelids. And it's telling you to make sure that they're always pointed in the right direction. Because if they're not, they're going to look at other stuff. Right? And so the point there is, you can't make your brain process something, but you can give your brain the right things to process or the wrong things. And with your eyes, if you point your eyes at the wrong stuff, it's going to have the wrong stuff to process. It's going to end up coming out in corrupt speech and talk and bad thoughts. But let your eyes, your eyelids, your whole being focus in the right direction, and this is how you guard your heart.
So mine says, look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. So as you're talking about that, it makes me think of Nathan was one of the hardest kids in the world. I mean, he wanted to take it all in. Wherever he was going to take it all in. He was going to look at it. He was going to touch it. He was going to be around it. And when we would discipline him or try to get his attention, it was very much
you had to put fingertips on his temples.
On the side of your head. And I'm like, look at me. And he would be doing this.
Looking out over your fingers.
Like just trying to see what was around. And It wasn't like he didn't want to pay attention. Like he was physically facing me, but his eyes were going everywhere.
And that, lends itself to the fact that human beings are different. So some people are very auditory. Some people are very visual. Some people are very tactile. And one of these is probably going to be harder for you than the rest of them because you are whatever way you are.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So how do you guard your heart? Watch what you say, watch what you see. And then the last one actually covers 2 verses. The last verse is kind of an exclamation point. But verse 26 and 27, ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or the left. Turn your foot away from evil. So it's watch what you say, watch what you see, and maybe take a stab at it. The last one.
Watch what you do.
Yeah, or watch where you go. That's it, yes. You're remembering the old sermon, aren't you? Watch what you say, watch what you see, and watch where you go. So good for youth camp, right? Because talking about your friends and who you're hanging out with and what you're doing. But in that, verse 26, ponder the path of your feet. I love the word ponder because it makes you say, oh, so I have to make some decisions. I have to think about this. But ponder is actually not the best understanding of that. What does the NLT say instead of ponder?
In 26?
Yeah, 26.
Mark out a straight path for your feet.
That's a better translation because the actual translation or the actual word means make level. And so if you remember the call of the prophet who would call out the name of Jesus, he will take down the high places and he will raise up the low places. And that wasn't a miraculous thing. That is what they did. If they knew the king's chariot was going from point A to point B, the king's engineers would go ahead and fill in all the potholes and take out all the speed bumps and make a level playing field. And so they would do that. Here comes the king. Well, here's what he's saying. If you're going to do everything you can, either pick a path that's not going to break your ankles or make a path that's not going to break your ankles. It's interesting, isn't it?
That does make so much sense.
Then all your ways will be sure. In other words, there are sure ways, and you're saying, well, you can't protect against everything. Well, again, you can't protect against everything, but you can do something.
Yeah.
Can do something. And
Yeah,
here's
you
what
can look ahead.
and take ways that are sure. If you look down the road and go, that looks like trouble, don't go that way. Just.
But doesn't this make so much sense too, based on like just the verse before it, where it says, "Look straight ahead." You can't see a pothole coming if you're looking over your shoulder.
Oh, there you go. That's
looking
good.
behind you.
Tying it all together, you are.
Yeah.
Tying it all together, you are. And then the last verse is kind of an exclamation point on this. Do you mean to mute you for a second?
No, I'm yeah.
Okay. Kathy's doing some personal grooming while we're with the Kleenex. I love you.
That is the worst. I'm so sorry, but my nose is running like crazy.
Oh, you're doing great. I'm so proud of you. I did tell you we didn't have to do this, right?
I know.
But you're the soldier. You're going to push through. Okay, so verse 27. Do not swerve to the right or the left. Turn your foot away from evil. The truth is that we just don't do that, and that's the warning, that we know this is a scary place. We know that this is where we get in trouble, and yet we don't turn our feet from those places. I used to always tell a story. I haven't told this story in a long time, and it was about you and I early on in the old Geo Metro. You remember this? And we would be going to preach someplace. I'd be preaching, and so you would drive for me because I had 3 jobs, so I was always writing sermons. So right up in the morning, right in the minute before I was doing it.
That is true.
And we were driving out in the middle of nowhere, western Kansas, probably going to preach in Russell, I think it was.
Probably.
And we were on these little 2-lane highways. And I now know what they call them. I didn't know what they called them before. They're called rumble strips.
Uh-huh.
And I'd be writing the sermon, and I would hear... Then we'd jerk back to the center, and I'd look up. You weren't even looking at me. Just nothing. I go back to writing. A couple minutes later, and I'd look over, and I go, you okay? And you're like, I am fine.
Yep. Doing good.
Yep.
Doing good. Yep.
And then there'd be a couple minutes later, and a hard yank back to the center and say, baby, we're going to be okay? And you would be like, I am fine.
I am fine. Just do your business.
Yes, this is what you'd
do
say.
What you gotta do.
Write your sermon, and I'll drive the car. And then, sure enough, we'd hear it again and go like, baby! And we'd have a little argument there on the way to church. And you're like, I'm going to do my job, you do your job, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, we're both going to be dead if you don't watch what you do. Are you sleeping? What's going on? And we'd be fighting because the only safe place to be on a highway is in your lane, going the right direction at the right speed.
It's true.
Everything else is dangerous, right?
It's true.
And that's what he's saying. Don't.
And maybe have a couple cups of coffee before you take off early in the morning.
I don't know that you can get that out of this verse. But,
no, but, practical.
Do not swerve to the right or the left, and turn your foot away from evil. Last illustration, and this is just because I preach this so many times, this is my favorite way to end this. What we do with evil is when we sense that we have stepped near evil, we don't yank our foot back and run away. Most of us treat evil like a hotel pool.
Mm.
It's a little cold, but man, we paid to be here. And so we stick our toe in until we get our foot used to it. And then we hold up to our calves. And it's miserable, but we're making ourselves get in this water. And bit by bit, inch by inch.
Slow fade.
Yeah, we just get into the water until it's finally right up to your chest. And finally you're like, sploosh. You just have enough courage to get in. And that's what we do with the things that we know we shouldn't be doing, the evil that we should not be a part of.
Yeah.
And the Bible tells us just the opposite. The minute you sense that your foot shouldn't be there, yank it away, fall to the ground, run, and skedaddle. Remember skedaddle? Skedaddle in a different direction. So that's it. That's how you guard your heart.
Yeah.
Above all else,
guard your heart.
For it is the wellspring of life. And we do that by watching what you say, watching what you see, and watching where you go.
You know what this this reminds me of that song, Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see.
Oh, yeah.
For the Father up above is looking down with love. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. ears what you hear, feet where you go.
Yeah, it's basically a version of this.
And say it's probably based on this.
It might be based on this.
Psalm,
I like that
I'm
song
guessing.
better than the song I heard this last week, which is "God's Gonna Get You for That." I was like, what?
That's probably not.
God's going to get you for that. I'm not encouraging anyone to look it up because it's about people with very licentious lifestyles and even pastors who are not doing their job. It's an old country song. God going to get you for that.
Oh, my. Let's not promote that. So be careful, little eyes, where
Yes.
what you see.
Much better song.
Oh.
Much better song.
Yeah, I don't even know what I was going to say about that.
Anyway, so watch what you say, watch what you see, what you do. Above all else, guard your heart. CPXL challenge. It is dealer's choice. Dealer's choice. That's right. Watch what you say, watch what you see, watch
Watch
what
where
you
you
go. And in that, one of those is probably speaking loudest to you. Take some steps and be intentional and say, I'm going to stop talking this way. Keep it at arm's length. Or I'm going to stop letting my eyes wander here. I'm going to stop going there because the truth is I need to guard my heart above all else.
Yeah.
That's our challenge. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. So take the challenge, read chapter 5 for next week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next edition of CPXL.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of CPXL. We hope that you have been challenged to go further and grow deeper. If this podcast has been a help to you, we ask that you would like, comment, and share on whatever platform you use. And if you would like to access additional resources, go to CrossPointChurch.com. We will see you again soon on another edition of CPXL.